On this episode of Survive and Thrive 8791, I welcome Sarah Karls to the Buck and Honey's remote studios. After a 30-plus year career in social work, Sarah Karls was ready to enjoy retirement until a routine physical revealed medullary thyroid cancer. Through humor, patience, and support, she faced the challenge head-on. Today, her cancer is undetectable, proof that even after the unexpected, we can survive and thrive. This will be a good one. Here we go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. What is up? Wherever you are, whatever you happen to be doing, I hope you're having a great day. Welcome to another episode of Survive and Thrive 8791. I'm your host, Coach Decora. We are in the Buck and Honey's remote studios on the east side of our great capital city of Madison, Wisconsin. You can listen to the podcast on many places, such as Spotify, Apple Music, iHeartRadio, and YouTube at Survive and Thrive 8791. You can follow the podcast on Facebook as well at Survive and Thrive 8791, the podcast, or you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at tdecora8791, as well as hitting me up on Facebook. Don't forget to hit that subscribe or like button wherever you listen to the show. Leave me a comment if you liked what you heard. If there's a topic or you know a guest who would love to tell their story, email me at tdecora@gmail.com. Glad you could join us today. Our mission is to share stories and conversations that make you cry, laugh, and think, stimulating emotions, creating laughter, and inspiring the mind. A new episode will air on Monday and Thursday morning featuring a wide range of guests. The podcast will touch on many subjects such as grief, loss of a loved one, recovery, professional setback, divorce, success despite challenges, etc. Our guests will share how they learn to survive and thrive. This is where we get into introducing a little bit of information from the World Wide Web, information superhighway, and we talk a little bit about why the guest is here today. According to the internet, and the internet is always right, correct, Sarah, with an H?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Gotta make sure we're there. In the U.S., medullary thyroid cancer, MTC, accounts for about 2% to 3% of all thyroid cancers diagnosed, with approximately 1,000 to 1,600 new cases diagnosed annually, with 340 million people in the United States as of the 2024 census. I don't know what the percentage is because I tried to figure it out. I'm not a math guy, and it just seems to be very rare. Today, I welcome Sarah Karls to the Buck and Honey's remote studios again, and we'll get into why she's here again. Raised in the Fox Valley area, Appleton, Wisconsin specifically, Sarah attended Appleton West High School. She is a terror. After high school, she would take her talents to the University of Wisconsin, Eau Claire, a fine institution, where she would graduate with a psychology degree. She would receive her master's degree in the School of Rehabilitation from Southern Illinois. After her college days, she would embark on a career in social work that has spanned over 3 decades. In 2023, she retired. Today, I'm so glad you could join us. Sarah Karls, what is up?
Hey, not much. Glad to be here, Tim.
Not much. I'm going to move this over here a little bit. There you go.
There we go.
Well, the reason Sarah Karls is back is I loved our conversation yesterday, and it was so good, but I went to go and hit the edit button. I couldn't wait to get to her content. It was really, really super good. And for some reason, I ran into a little snafu. We got the video, but we did not get the audio. And that's important when you're running a podcast, but we did a couple of tests and hopefully it works out. We ran into each other, and you're going to a film festival movie today, but we ran into each other, I think it was on Sunday night. You went to a Little Packer movie, and we were going in to watch a Badger basketball movie, and at least ours was good. How was yours? I know you talked a little bit about it. It had a unique twist to it.
Well, the film was great. It was called No Packers, No Life, and it was about a group of Japanese people who are huge Packer fans, and a guy who's from Wisconsin happened to be in Tokyo and met this guy who was wearing a Packer jersey and found out there's this whole Japanese cheering section.
Did they start yelling like when I see people in an airport wearing Packer gear, go Pack, go?
That's all they could say in English,
oh,
which was really cute. So they ended up working with a group of people in Green Bay and with the Packer organization to get a whole group of 30 tickets together and get them to a game in Wisconsin and Green Bay. So it was super funny, and it was really emotional too.
I think people, when they hear of stories like that, super funny and super cute.
It was so cute because, what's really cool about it was the clash of the cultures. So for the most part, Japanese people are pretty reserved. And people from Green Bay, nope.
No.
Packer fans will just let it all hang out. So it's the blending of those cultures. And it was really fun. Really enjoyable movie.
So when you left and we got done, we packed up stuff and put away the computer, and I said, oh, darn, I wanted to talk about our trip to Mexico, which is so hard to believe that was 12 years ago, 2013, when the fellas were, young 18-year-old, 17-year-old dudes, and we took them down. What do you remember about that?
Well, it was a lot of fun. Like, the kids didn't want to spend any time with the adults, but that's pretty typical. Yeah, no, I remember you got there a day early, and you had 2 days in the sun, and we had really essentially one. I don't know if you remember the weather, but it rained and it was kind of cold, and you had the really good day, and then it was bad until I think the day before we left. Then there was a little bit of sun. Yep.
And
the boys sure had fun.
The boys sure had fun. So you're in retirement in 2023. You'll have to refresh me again. You retired and then you unretired.
Right. So I left working for Dane County Human Services in June of 2023, and just was having a relaxing life, playing a lot of golf, working on my garden, doing a lot of reading like I like to do. And then my old boss approached me and said, gee, could you come back? And that was April of 2024. And then I stayed there as an LTE. They really needed the help. So I said, okay. And stayed there until the end of December of this past year. And at that point, I had the diagnosis of medullary thyroid cancer. So I'm like, nope, I'm not staying. So I re-retired.
Yeah, I was going to say, we also mentioned that sometimes in different fields, and I don't know, in social work, there could be 50 jobs, but there are only 30 graduates in the whole system graduating from college with that degree that can satisfy those job requirements. And it seems like the same thing exists in teaching, where there's 10 jobs, but there's only 4 people that are qualified. Might be a bunch of people trying to get those jobs, but I'm sure it's the same way with you. And
it was, yeah. I mean, when I interviewed in 1986, when was it? I don't remember. No, I started at the county actually, and that's when I started at my previous job when I came up and worked for New Concepts, but worked there 6 years and then left after I had my first baby. And then I interviewed in a group of 36 people and got the job, so I was pretty excited. Top
of the hill, 36 people, and I think it was because of your reliability and maybe some of that humor that they wanted you to be back. And we need Sarah Karls back around here.
Well, it actually was the humor. One of the questions was, what question are you sick of answering? I said, paper or plastic.
Paper or plastic,
yes. At the grocery store.
At the grocery store, yes. I do most of the shopping, so I am used to that now. Actually, I go through the self-serve, so I don't get that. I got to figure it out which one I want. So with spring right around the corner, and you already alluded to a little bit of the golf and maybe being a little bit of a green thumb. What are you looking forward to this spring?
I'm just looking forward to continued good health and working on my garden. We also start going to our cottage at the end of May and opening that up for the season. And so we do a lot of, trips here, trips there, back and forth, and play golf up there and just enjoy the beach too. So that's really fun.
Are you throwing the hip waders on and getting in and putting the pier in?
I do not. My brothers do that.
Your brothers do that.
But it's very cold this time of year, but we help carry all the sections, and, it's one of those, or the dock sections are really heavy, and you got to carry all the metal pieces to it. So, yeah, it takes a while, but we get all that stuff done and take the shutters off all the old buildings. And put those away, and the guys get together and do kind of a boys' weekend and get the lawn all cleaned up with all the leaves from the oak trees. So they enjoy that.
Cool. Before we get to your story, I need to talk about our sponsor. Our sponsor, Buck and Honey's Restaurants, are a place that people can escape to. For me, it's escaping from cooking dinner. You're the cook in the house?
I am.
You are? With their great food and drink menu, 5-star customer service, and a welcoming and vibrant atmosphere, people keep coming back. With locations in Sun Prairie, Monona, Waunakee, and Mount Horeb, most communities in the Dane County area, which encompasses our great capital city, Madison, can get to a Buck and Honey's within 10 to 15 minutes, and I'll do the drum roll. Have you been to Buck and Honey's?
I have. I love it. It's so nice that it's so close to us.
It is,
In
on that
Waunakee.
side of town, yeah. And
Love it.
what was your favorite?
I think the last time I was there, I had the fish tacos, and they were excellent. I do like the spicy shrimp as well.
And I always mention, try the pizza, Bomber Special. On the podcast, our guests follow the format for sharing their story like this. In segment 1, we talk about what it was like, her history, so we'll hear about Sarah and her days in the Fox Valley and what happened to get her on the podcast. In segment 2, we continue to talk about what happened and then get into what it's like now and discuss the 5 suggestions for thriving. You grew up in the Fox Valley, and the Fox Valley is essentially from, maybe you can tell us here in a little bit, but my thought is like Green Bay all the way down to about Oshkosh, kind of like right on the shore, and Kaukauna and Little Chute and Neenah, Menasha, and of course Appleton and in there. What was life like growing up and you were the baby?
I was a baby, yes. I have 4 older brothers, and as I was telling Tim yesterday, when my mom was pregnant with me, for Christmas my dad gave her a basketball, thinking that she'd have a 5-man team. So she was not pleased.
And she was not pleased with that?
No, she was not pleased. So, no, I had a pretty normal upbringing. We would, at the end of the school year, every year, my mom would pick us up and literally pack us in the car, and off we went to the cottage, which is up near Minocqua, Lac du Flambeau area. And we'd stay there until September, and then we'd come back to Appleton.
It was one of those, that was an old thing where back in, who knows, the 40s, 50s, 60s, people wouldn't go on a long vacation. Now is probably 4 to 7 days, maybe a week.
Right.
Back then it could have been 2 weeks to a month. You were on the road just driving all over the place, doing things. And you would go up north for almost 3 months then.
Yeah. I mean, we just lived up there, and we learned to water ski, and we built forts, and, we just did things that kids do, but it was different from living around here where you'd go to a county fair or, watch a baseball game. We didn't have any of that. Going to the library was kind of the highlight of the week.
The big thing, go to the library.
Yeah.
And then you talked about your dad being a physician, right?
He was a physician, yeah. He worked in Appleton during the summers, and then he'd come up on the weekends. But he was a family practice physician when people had kind of small practices. But he was the person who first started teaching family clinics in the state of Wisconsin. So it's a pretty cool claim to fame.
And then your mom, what was she up to?
She was a homemaker. I mean, I think she, like many other moms of the era, just put, our needs first. She didn't really take care of herself, and unfortunately, she passed away when she was 64 of cancer, of breast cancer that had spread pretty badly before it was discovered. So, it's been, one of my impetuses for taking care of myself a lot better. She died when I was 33. And I was pregnant with my son Ian, so I just kind of made a vow, like, I am going to take care of myself and put myself first, and that's what I've done.
And then you have this thing come out of nowhere, which was kind of a shocker for you. You have a family of your own, and today I'm wearing, if the people on Spotify can, Don's Painting Inc. Don started that company. Were you in with him then when he started the painting?
He started that in 1985, and I met him in 1988. And he wasn't, totally busy, obviously, then. He didn't have a huge client base. So in the winter, he also had a degree, associate's degree in accounting. So he would do taxes back before they got to be so complicated, where you could do them on paper and file them. So he had quite a base of clients through that in the winters, which got him through. But then the business just gradually grew and grew and grew, and we moved to Waunakee in 1990 and bought a house, and then been there ever since. So now they're having their 40-year anniversary. Our son bought him out, and Ian runs it now. It's just been a great transition.
Well, just how much development that has taken place in Waunakee. When I moved there in 1995, there was, I want to say, 6,000 or 7,000 people there, and now it's 16 or 17,000, and then Westport has grown, and and so with the growth comes the need for painters and a painting company, and Don's Ink is very
extremely
reliable,
busy, yes,
extremely busy, and brings that just nice wholesome 2-person, 3-person crew or whatever, and they do a great job. And then your kiddos. So you talked a little bit about Ian. He's the owner.
So he's my second one. My first one, Bree, she was born at the very end of 1991, and she met and married a local guy, Tony, and she works for Exact Sciences. She's doing really well, and just they live out in Dane and just are doing really well together.
That's a pretty reputable company.
Yeah.
Exact Sciences, as well as Madigan Refrigeration.
That's right. You can rep for them, too.
Yes. After high school, you would take your talents to UW-EC, UW-Eau Claire. What was the lure there?
Well, as I mentioned yesterday, I was not really much of a leader in high school. I was kind of a follower, and some of my friends were going there. And I thought, well, okay, I really like that. I'm going to go there, too. My mom wanted me to go. She wanted me to go to a private college for women only. I'm like, really? I don't think so. So I did not listen to her and went to Eau Claire, but I had such a good time, and I made a lot of new friends there, and lived in a couple fun houses off campus. And so I left there with a degree in psychology and a minor in Spanish in 1983, and then went immediately to graduate school actually that summer to start an assistantship in July of 1983, and I didn't really realize what the temperature would be in Carbondale, Illinois.
Yeah, you became a Saluki at Southern Illinois.
I did, yes.
And what was the lure there?
Well, the particular degree I was seeking, which was called behavior analysis and therapy, there were only I think 3 colleges that offered that degree. So one of them was Western Michigan, which I applied to, but my scores in my graduate record exam were so bad I did not get in. Which
Kalamazoo.
I remember at the time I was pretty mad about it. And then Drake, and I'm still on the waiting list at Drake, so if you hear anything.
Drake is the Harvard of the Midwest, I heard, along with UW-Platteville.
Oh, really? In Des Moines, yeah. But then I got in, I called one day down to SIU. I had applied to them, and I spoke to the secretary in the behavior therapy office, and she said, oh, yeah, we've accepted you. We base our admissions on what you've done in terms of your work. So I've done a lot of work in working with rats and pigeons and things that, and applied behavior analysis, but had not really worked with people or with people with disabilities, which I did down there, and I really loved it. So I wanted to continue doing that after I graduated, and also wanted to get back to Wisconsin. So I found out about this company called New Concepts, and they first offered me a job in Green Bay. So I could have lived in Green Bay, and my life would have been totally different.
And you, instead of marrying a painter, you would have married a packer.
I know. I would have been rich.
You would have been rich. Well, yeah, you're rich now.
So that didn't work out. They ended up putting someone else in that position, and they said, well, would you be interested in Madison? I'm like, yeah. So that's what brought me here in 1986.
So after college, then you would embark on a 30-plus year career in social work, and you've already touched on it, that maybe it was being around people that had specific needs, either physical needs or really then social work opens up to all kinds of other needs.
It does.
How did you decide on that type of work besides being around them? Was it something from growing up as well, or?
Well, I actually did some volunteer work when I was in high school, working with at the Outagamie County Health Care Center with people with intellectual disabilities, and I loved it. So I just kind of knew in the back of my mind that's the direction I wanted to go.
And then your dad was also being that kind of person that's, giving back to the community as a doctor.
Very much so.
Of service to mankind. Mm-hmm. And you wanted to do kind of the same thing. Yeah,
for sure. But, he always admired my career. In some ways, though, back being so old-fashioned, he's like, why don't you just become a nurse? And I'm like, no, I didn't want to go that route. But he never said, why don't you become a doctor?
They should have used reverse psychology. Don't be a nurse. And you maybe would have became a nurse.
Yeah. And I really enjoyed that career. But, the last 5 years I was with the county, I ended up working in adult protective services with helping people with dementia and traumatic brain injuries, among others, help them go under guardianship when they didn't have any advanced planning. So that was so interesting to work with the courts. I really, really enjoyed it.
And if they don't have family or such taking care of them, there's got to be somebody, and that's the kind of the role that you did.
That's right, and it really made me realize how important it was to have a power of attorney in place. Everybody should have that. I'm just putting a plug in right now.
Power of attorney.
For health care and for your finances.
Okay. You retired in 2023. Then in 2024, you were diagnosed with MTC, medullary thyroid cancer, because of a routine physical. And they called you and said, hey, you got to come in, or you called them and said, hey, I gotta get my physical done.
Yeah, it was weird. I mean, I normally just am right on schedule and call, but they called from the clinic in Wanakee, Dean SSM Clinic, and said, hey, it's time for your annual wellness exam. I'm like, what? Isn't that a physical? So it is until you turn 65, then it's a wellness exam.
So physical up through 64, wellness 65 and after.
Yep.
Yeah, so I learned something now.
Yeah. Yeah, so I went in and everything was going, as I said, swimmingly yesterday.
Yep.
You know, my heart, lungs, everything was fine. All my parts were really, really good. And she was saying, you know, Sarah, you don't have to come back until you're 65, and we'll do the wellness check and do the osteoporosis check, all that kind of stuff. And I said, great. She said, I have one more thing to do. And then she stood behind me and put her hands and felt my thyroid. She said, well, this feels a little swollen, so I'd like you to get, or enlarged. She said, I'd like you to get an ultrasound on your neck, and we'll help you set that up. So don't worry, is what she said, the last thing she said. So I didn't, and we set that up, and they did the ultrasound and found that on the left side that there were nodules that they discovered, one on the left, one on the right. And the left one was pretty enlarged. The one on the right wasn't. But the next step was then a needle biopsy, which I would not recommend to anyone. It was very painful. So they did the needle biopsy on both sides. The left side, they stage it in something called Bethesda staging, 1 through 6. Mine was a 5, which is very suspicious, or highly suspicious, of this type of thyroid cancer. The one on the right was benign. So then my next steps were to have a consult with a surgeon, an endocrine surgeon, which I did in December, on December 18th.
So this was all happening very quickly?
Very quickly, okay. Yes. Yeah, and it was really just completely stressful. I didn't really have time to kind of adapt to what's next, you know, and just blood work like crazy, different types of tests I'd never heard of. So on December 14th, I had these 2 blood tests before I went in on December 18th to meet with the surgeon, and it's called CEA and calcitonin. So CEA is a carcinoembryonic antigen test.
Say that 5 times, listeners, quick.
I think I'm saying it right. I'm not a doctor, but that one it's a protein in the blood that can indicate you have cancer somewhere in your body. It's not always really reliable, but that one, and the one that's more accurate in diagnosing MTC, is calcitonin, which is, if that's super elevated, that really means that you have likely have MTC. And so my numbers were off the chart for that one and pretty high for the CEA. And it was like 536 when normal, I think, is like 14 or something. Anyway, so when I looked on my chart and saw that I was going to meet with the surgeon, and I clicked on more detail and said, evaluate for medullary thyroid cancer. I was like freaked out, because then I started Googling it, right?
We turn into some people turn into a Google doctor.
Yes, and that was pretty scary.
And don't do that.
Don't do that, because all I was reading was, gosh, you might have a life expectancy of 5 years if it's spread. And it does, and it often spreads to other parts of your body, especially your liver and your lungs.
Well, I know I've had a couple of guests on here that talked about if somebody says you have to have cancer, pick one. It's thyroid cancer is what I've kind of heard. People might disagree with me because it's slow moving and it doesn't move. But medullary thyroid cancer is rare, and you said moves pretty quick.
No, it doesn't move quickly. It is a very slow-moving cancer, but it can, when it does move, it moves to different organs. The other 2 types of cancer before that, papillary and follicular, don't tend to spread, and usually younger people get that, most often women, it seems, but men do too. And then there's one more, actually worse than MTC, called anaphylactic, which, as I mentioned yesterday, if you have that, you might as well write out your last will, because it tends to wrap around the trachea and affect other organs pretty quickly.
Make sure you have your affairs in order.
Exactly, your power of attorney.
Power of attorney.
Exactly. I was pretty freaked out, with this whole, I had been taking care of myself. I exercised a lot. I for the most part, ate healthy, but I'm on a pretty strict exercise routine with yoga and strength training and taking my dog for some power walks every day for the most part. So, I've kept my weight mostly in check. Menopause does a whole different thing to your body, but, for the most part, I didn't really have any health concerns. I wasn't even on any prescribed medication. And I was 63 years old. I'm like, what the hell? And there was a lot of why me, and just a really dark time.
So we're going to close the first segment here, but you have some surgery then to evict some people from your body, and we'll talk about what that is. And also, just want to let the listeners know that even though we're not treating cancer as something to laugh about, knowing as long as I've known the Karls, there's a lot of humor in their family. And Sarah chose to go that route of trying to laugh about things and take them in stride because of some of the inner conflict that was going on, and that can be healthy too. And she's here to talk about how humor in odd places and dark places can pull you and lift you up. And it works. Humor works for everything, smiling and laughing and giggling. And in this case, we applied it to some cancer. Buck and Honeys has been with the Survive and Thrive 8791 crew since the beginning, with 4 locations in the Madison area. One is always near. People ask why. Buck and Honeys owner Tom Anderson places a high priority on the mental health of his employees. He has a mental health professional available for them should they need support. I don't know how many businesses go above and beyond their EAP, Employee Assistance Program, but Buck and Honeys does. In December 2024, you're diagnosed with medullary thyroid cancer. And Sarah Karls steps into the world of being a cancer patient very quickly, and things started moving, and she's on the mend here. It's April 9th, and she's on the mend, clear as can be. But we're going to talk about what happened between December and today. So please stay tuned. Don't change that channel. You're not going to want to miss segment 2 of Survive and Thrive 8791. We'll be back.
If you, a loved one, or someone you know is experiencing a physical, mental, or emotional crisis, there is help and resources out there. Contact NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness Helpline, at 1-800-950-6264. This is a free service providing information, resource referrals, and support to people living with a mental illness, their family, providers, and the public. United Way 211 is available 24/7, 365 and offers free confidential assistance. They connect people with the local programs and services that can help. Dial 211. Emergency Crisis Services, dial 911. The Suicide Prevention Lifeline, dial 988. To connect via web, chat, visit suicidepreventionlifeline.org. Along with those numbers, there is help. You just need to say 3 words. I need help. Now, back to the show.
We are back. Welcome back to segment 2 of Survive and Thrive 8791. I'm your host, Coach Tim Decora. The podcast is where I feature guests who share their story in hopes of helping others who may be struggling with what life throws at them. After a career in social work spanning over 30 years, Sarah Karls went in for her yearly physical, and she was diagnosed in December 2024 of medullary thyroid cancer, MTC. She's here today to share her story in hopes that her journey will help others who are diagnosed with a rare cancer get the necessary help that they need to survive and thrive. And she puts a little humorous spin on this because that's just who she is, and that's coping skill, humor. So she's diagnosed in December 2024, and going in for blood tests and scans and images and all kinds of stuff. It is recommended that before Christmas, she goes and has some surgery scheduled. However, her surgeon decides to leave the country and go home for winter break. Part of our podcast is to talk about what happened, and then also the mental state of mind of people, and then what they did to get through that, And that's kind of that education sharing part. So your surgeon leaves the country, and you're stuck trying to entertain the world, and in particular your family, over Christmas. Let's talk about how you were handling that.
I think I handled it really well on the outside, but on the inside, I was a mess. It was a dark time. After reading all that lovely Google information, and I was also scheduled because my surgeon thought there might have been a spread to this cancer to, as they call it, distant parts of my body. So they scheduled a 3-part CT scan of chest, abdomen, and my head, and my neck. And so I went to that, but that was not scheduled until January 9th. And I also, which I forgot to mention yesterday, I had to have genetic counseling done to see if I carried these genes that could be transferred, or I guess my kids could have this type of genetic mutation as well. One of them being MEN2 and one being called RET. Both of those can cause other endocrine cancers, and there was the thought that this had spread to my adrenal glands because I was so stressed out. I had a blood test done during that time of, I don't know what it was called, like norepinephrine, but it tests that is produced through your adrenal glands. And I was so stressed out, I went and got the blood test, not thinking I was stressed out. I wouldn't let myself think that. But it came back, 2 of the levels were normal and one was really high. It's involved in the fight and flight response. So my surgeon saw that before she left the country, and she was a little freaked out and said, "You got to repeat this test." So I did that right after Christmas, the day after Christmas, and she said, "We're going to do it in a dark room. You're going to just be really mellow and sit in a chair." And it worked. So it was at the Dean Clinic in the East Side, but one of the nurses came in and we started showing pictures of our dog, so that really calmed me down. So they took that blood level again and it was normal. So it hadn't spread to my adrenal glands. So imagine you have to worry enough about whether it spread to the rest of your body or it spread to other endocrine organs. I was a mess. It was just awful.
So it's almost commonplace now when somebody gets cancer that there's testing to see if you have those markers that
Yes.
were passed on to you genetically, and then now that you could transfer to your own kids. And I think it's really cool so that your kids can now start to take precautions,
Well,
or even get tests themselves,
I guess
correct?
to stop you there,
Okay.
the good thing is when I had the genetic testing, they tested me for all sorts of different DNA sequencing, and one of them was the BRCA gene for breast cancer, the BRCA, and there was maybe some concern on my part that I might have that like my
Because
mother
you
did.
had your mother had that. Right?
But that everything came back normal. There were no mutations, no bad mutations. So my kids don't have to worry about it, nor do my brothers that they might have this. So that was really, really good news. In fact, the geneticist put a really long note on my chart and said, "This is great. Said, call me in 5 years if you have more questions about things."
We had a football coach on about 2 months ago that had the widowmaker, blocked arteries, 100% blockage. And what came out of that was a health scare, and he got that fixed. But then his brother and sister went in to get checked, and they wouldn't have had any reason to, and they both had some blockage as well. So it's important to get your physicals, get your wellness, know your genetics, and do the best you can. And even if you do the best you can to stay in shape, there's nothing that says that some of this stuff can't come up. But because of how well you took care of your body, I think that probably helped the healing process.
Well, I think it mattered going into that scan, even though I didn't feel like that before the scan, because when I got the results, as I mentioned yesterday, during a Packer game where they were losing, I didn't care for once that they were losing.
What?
Because I just wanted to see the result of the scan, and it just said no metastases below the neck. So I was so excited about that. And that was when I first started to calm down a little bit.
Yeah.
I was, of course, anxious before the surgery.
So you dropped in some subtle little things that I want to kind of just hit on real quick. Dark room, sitting in a quiet dark room, almost sounds like some people would say that's meditation. And then talking about man's best friend and showing some pictures of your dog and something that makes you feel good and nice. And those are 2 really good coping mechanisms that people don't think of. But if you're feeling bummed or you're feeling a little anxious, go to a dark room and sit down and be quiet, or pull out some pictures and get the warm fuzzies.
That's right.
So you have surgery to move,
To remove.
to evict
evict.
some folks from your body.
Yes.
Your thyroid and your lymph nodes. And this is where the humor comes in. This is where the humor comes in. But let me just shut my big yapper and you talk about him.
Well, I've always, as Don was saying, my husband, like, you've always named your cars. Why not name your thyroid? So she became Thelma, kind of like Thelma and Louise. And she had to go off the cliff. And my friend Rachel, she said, well, they're Larry and the Lymphettes. So it was Thelma and Larry and the Lymphettes. And I wanted my great niece to draw me a picture of him. She's a really good artist in Lodi, but she never got to that, but that's okay. So when I had the surgery that day, I told the surgical staff, you got to get rid of Thelma. So
Get rid of Thelma
funny.
and
Yep.
Larry and the Lymphettes.
Yep.
So you awake from this 6-hour surgery.
Yes.
Tell us what the next days and weeks were like, because you got thrown a major change-up / curveball,
Yeah.
which made things a little bit worse, but I'm glad you're
Yeah.
here to talk about it.
Yeah, so I woke up after 6 hours, as you say, and felt just like I got hit by a truck. And I said, what's wrong? And the surgeon said, you have influenza A. And I would not have done this surgery if I'd known that. And I didn't know it. So I just felt really horrible. I just,
Not because of, well, maybe a little bit because of the surgery, but mainly because you were just sick.
I was sick, and that was such a bad virus that, the fatigue that it caused, and then I had the pain and inability to, rotate my neck at all. It was just really a struggle. And then further setback, there was some lymphatic drainage that was causing them to say, you need to get a drain installed in your neck. So I'm like, oh boy, just to get another piercing in my neck. So we went back to interventional radiology, as they call it, where they work with ultrasound, and they put a drain in, and then I had to have the fluid drain out and wear that lovely bag with me at night. So my stay in the hospital was extended. And, it was just sucked because you're being awakened every couple hours for your blood pressure, and they have to do
And the nurse asking,
how you pooping?
How you pooping?
In the middle of the night, and turn over, your blood pressure's too high. So it was just like, I never got any good quality sleep. But, that's what happens in the hospital. But so surgery was on Monday, and by Thursday, all of the PAs who had come in from the surgeon just said, this is looking really good, this drainage, and it's not this thing that it could be, which was something called chylose, which I don't even pretend to understand what that is, but it's bad. It would have come out as white fluid, and I would have had to have another surgery and stay through Sunday. And so it wasn't that. And then Thursday, the surgeon came in, and I thought, well, I better be paying attention, turn the TV off, and listen to her. She's somebody who talks really fast, and you have to be quite engaged to hear everything she says. And she just said, well, this is good news. It's not the chylose fluid. We're going to pull the drain today, and you can go home. And I just burst into tears, which is not me. My kids will both say, you are not a crier. But I sobbed. I was like, this
is where we need that button on my sound machine and go, aww.
It was just that, part of the had ended, and I was going home. So
little fist pump.
Oh, yeah.
So you have Thelma and Larry and the Lymphettes are evicted.
Yep.
And we talked about this in a text message I asked, so did you have to have chemotherapy, radiation, or immunotherapy? And you said you didn't.
I did not, no. Since the cancer had not spread, and they got it all out. So I didn't find this out until March, when I went to see my endocrinologist and asked her to explain, can you please explain this biopsy report? I don't quite understand it. And she said, sure. She said they removed 57 lymph nodes. Lymphettes, yes. Larry. Lots of Larrys. And your thyroid, and 5 of those had cancer. And they were very clear markers. They got it all. And the tumor itself inside the thyroid was less than half an inch. So all of that, all the markers were clear. There was no cancer in the rest of my body or in my head, so there's no need for any sort of chemo or radiation.
Or immunotherapy.
But, I do have to, and I did repeat the CEA and the calcitonin test in early March, which came back showing that the cancer was undetectable. So that was sweet. I just kind of bounced out of the clinic like Tigger. I was pretty excited.
And then you guys jumped into a car and drove south.
Drove south down to Florida to see my brother and sister-in-law.
And you had something to celebrate besides the warm weather down there.
Yeah. Just that, this was, at least for the moment, I mean, I'm not making light at all of other people who experience MTC, because it can come back, and you're not considered clear or have your cancerversary, can't say that right, anniversary of cancer being clear for 10 years. So, I have another blood level check on those 2 blood levels in June.
Well, 10 years is that magic number when I've heard people who go into remission or don't have stuff show up on their blood work, where you can start to feel a little bit safe. So if somebody has medullary thyroid cancer and they go down that same route, you're going to tell them that they have to go and still do some things?
Yes, I would just go off the Googles, and if you're going to look at anything, go on the Cleveland Clinic or on the Mayo Clinic
Yes, we talked
websites.
about that. Yep.
So go there, and also the American Thyroid Association. Those are all very helpful. I also joined a Facebook group. It's a private group, and kind of mixed feelings about it. I mean, I would not have wanted to look at that prior to my surgery, as I was so anxious, because there's all across the spectrum of how much people are affected by this MTC. Some have it discovered late, and there's a lot of talk of, people who are going through various chemotherapies or a lot of immunotherapy as well. And then there's other people like me who have known it's not detectable.
Mm-hmm.
So
you have some golf to look forward to. You're doing some traveling. You're going to the Wisconsin Film Festival. I don't think you mentioned it earlier. You mentioned it yesterday that the farmers market is opening, and you're going to get a green thumb, and Don's going to build you some
raised garden beds.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. So we got that going. This is where our subscribers, followers, and listeners take out the notebooks, pens, and pencils and jot some things down. And you have already shared more than the 5, but you focused in on some of these as well. So here's what Sarah sent me that has helped her get through this short amount of time. It was about 3 or 4 months of uncertainty, fear, anger, why me, and is here today to share her story and these 5 things. And I'm going to toss these in underhand softball style, and I'm going to have you say, I'm going to tell you, go ahead and hit that, and just take about 2 minutes or less to talk about these. So here we go. Number 1, take that one day at a time approach. Go ahead and hit that.
Sure. So as I mentioned before, when I was diagnosed that day, December 18th, I'll just never forget it. It was just like I got hit by a brick. I thought I could handle all this by myself, so I went to that appointment alone. I wish I'd never done that. There was just a lot to absorb. I was stressed to the max, and I just ran out of the clinic literally in these dumb shoes. And that next day I woke up and I had thrown my back out. And, there was just, I guess I was thinking kind of an absolutist way of, I'm going to die in less than 5 years. And that grief and that anger and everything had just kind of bubbled up. So you have to really look at it of, it's a journey. It's not, wow, you're diagnosed with cancer, you're going to die. It's step by step. And you'll get through this, but this is what you have to do. My friend Kathy, who I golf with, one of the people I golf with, she was going through a cancer journey with her friend who was dying, and she just said, Sarah, that's not going to happen today. So I have kind of taken that on of it's not today, and we'll get through it.
You had a friend talk about his anxiety, and when he refocused and said, I got to take 1 minute at a time where I start feeling better, and then an hour, and then a day, and then you can start maybe looking at the weeks. But yeah, what am I doing now to help this and or how I'm feeling?
Absolutely.
Number 2, learn as much as you can about your diagnosis. And I do want to reemphasize this, that because I have a I have a doctor cousin, and she goes on Mayo because she graduated from the University of Minnesota. And then I also have a friend who worked for the CDC, and she looks at the Cleveland Clinic, and you already mentioned it, but Yeah, you can do all kinds of wild stuff on Google, but go to some reputable places. So go ahead and talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, I already alluded to that those were the sites to look at. I would also not really recommend looking at YouTube videos of the surgery. That's A, kind of gross, and B, people have such different surgeries. Mine, when the surgeon was talking about it and giving me all this information, she said, well, if you have the cancer has gone to each side of your lymph nodes, you're going to have a central dissection, thyroidectomy, as well as a left and a right neck dissection. And that would be, that's a lot to go through. Fortunately, it was only on my left side, but still, it was still a lot to go through in terms of a surgery and recovery with the neck muscles. They're still recovering. But I think the more you know as you go in, the better. Mm-hmm. And also being in good physical shape, if you can do that, that really helped me.
Informed and educated.
Yes, absolutely.
And body prepared.
Yes.
Number 3, accept help from others.
And that's huge for me. I was like, nope, I don't need help. And my friend Odulia, who's going to be the mother of the bride, she said, will you accept a meal train? And I went, wow, I guess. And I said, yeah. And I'm really glad I did, because not only was I in pain with my neck, I was so sick I could barely move when I got home. So they set up, she and my other friend Rachel coordinated this and had meals delivered every other day. It was absolutely a lifesaver. And one thing my friend gave me was a $50 gift card to Buck and Honey's.
Oh, yeah.
So that was really nice, too.
You forgot to throw that one in yesterday.
But in addition to that, I have another neighbor, Jennifer, who she came over and repotted all my plants for me. I mean, just things like that are really kind and thoughtful. And, I feel really lucky that I have such good support.
Yeah, I know at least me, always forget that other part. We all like to do things for other people, especially ones that are in some kind of need, trouble, and how much that makes us feel. But we also have to be giving of let people do those things. And then when you look back on it, I just saw when you were talking about your friend coming over and repotting your plants, you smiled. You had a huge smile on your face. So knowing that helps somebody. Number 4, accept a new normal.
Yeah, so this, I never knew what it was like. Cancer happened to everybody else, right? Never. It's never going to happen to me. Well, it did happen to me. And I was viewing myself as, I have cancer. I'm just this cancer patient. And it just took me a while of, no, you're still the same person inside. And you still have the same interest. And same people love you and you love them. Accept that. And cancer is just part of who you are. But you just kind of have to move on. It's part of your life. But so is your regular routine and the people you love.
Yeah, that new normal. And when I think of Sarah Karls, I don't think of cancer patients. And those of you that are listening right now can hear the roar of some F-35s in the background. We live over by the airport. But anyway, when I think of you, I don't think of you as cancer patient. I think of you as this just really nice person who injects a lot of humor. And when I see you and Don, I kind of get a huge smile on my face. I'm like, got to go over right away. Number 5, do things that make you feel good.
And with this, I was thinking when I was kind of really low, when I came back from the hospital and I was still recovering from, the surgery, but also the flu, and I was just not even able to move and sit on that couch all day, and I was just really down. I had a trip that was set up, besides our trip to Florida, another trip to play golf in Arizona and go to a golf camp. And I thought, I'm going to have to cancel that. I can't do this. And I just was really kind of beating myself up. But as I started to recover, and in February, I'm like, I'm going to do this. Tomorrow wasn't guaranteed. Mm-hmm. And I'm really glad I did it. It was, certainly not cheap, but it was something I loved. And it made me feel good that I went to enhance my skills, and I did it on my own and hung out with strangers. But I learned a lot, and I don't regret it for a minute.
And you said that you thought that maybe you might be one of the more experienced people in age.
Yeah, I thought, gosh, I'm 63, and I think I'll be the oldest one in camp. And for the most part, people were in their late 50s. There was one couple who might have been about 70, but no, I ended up golfing with a fellow who was there, who was 86.
86 years old,
Yeah.
years young.
He was great, and his wife had just passed away, so he was out there to just do it too, and I thought that was really wonderful.
What a great episode. I'm so glad you could join the Survive and Thrive 8791 crew today. Your story and how you thrived after a diagnosis of medullary thyroid cancer is inspiring. Your story reminds us all to have coping skills or mental health tools in the toolbox when something like cancer, a cancer diagnosis, and a kind of a mental health scare can strike seemingly out of nowhere. Despite your diagnosis, you survived and thrived, and that's why I wanted you to come on the show. Sarah Karls just shared her story and what it's like to receive a diagnosis no one wants, and that's cancer. She went through a time of uncertainty, and because she dove into her diagnosis to learn more, get educated, she was able to cope whether she knew it or not. She hopes her story will help others know that a cancer diagnosis can come out of nowhere and have those tools in the toolbox. Here are Sarah's 5 suggestions that helped her survive and thrive. Number 1, one day at a time approach. Number 2, learn as much as you can about your diagnosis. Number 3, accept help from others. Number 4, accept a new normal. Number 5, do the things that make you feel good. So final thoughts as we close another great episode of Survive and Thrive 8791. Sarah, are there any final thoughts?
Yes, I was looking around on that Facebook site and found a gentleman who was also diagnosed at age 63, and that was 9 years ago. And his name, I've got to look at my phone.
Here's a book review for some of you, so get those pencils and pens ready.
Yeah, so his name is Bill Nelson, and he's the author of a book called Firm Grip, Learning to Thrive When Life Doesn't Go as Planned. So I ordered it. I think it's probably here by now, but I haven't read it yet. And I looked a little bit at some of the passages in it, and I looked at this quote, and it kind of struck me of, when I was so down of why me, but why not me, right? And so this quote goes as this: you can choose to see your darkness as nothing but disruption and pain that has ruined your life, or you can choose to open yourself to what your darkness can teach you. So sorry, I get a little emotional, but it makes me feel positive that I can help others maybe kind of go through this if they have the MTC diagnosis. So I would love to help.
Why not Sarah Karls? Because of your background of spending 30 years in social work, helping people to survive and thrive in whatever that happened, whatever aspect that happened to be, you were there for people. And if anybody's going to get cancer, and it might as well be Sarah Karls, because it's work that you have done, and you are really good at it.
Thank you.
And then you come on the show, and this is going to help a ton of people, whether it's a cancer diagnosis or anything. They can use the stuff that you did. Humor being one of them that wasn't in your 5, but it's there all the time. So I'm glad you came on. On our next episode of Survive and Thrive 8791, we will have another amazing guest in the Buck and Honey's remote studios who will share how they learned to survive and thrive. If you have a story to share, or you know someone who does, please reach out to me at tdecora@gmail.com. Until next time, hang in there with whatever you happen to be going through, and with hard work, dedication, and determination, you can survive and thrive. Until next time, take care.